Welcome to Perception versus Reality, Sports and Culture, where we cover sports from a different angle and bring you topics most podcasts and radio shows will not cover. I'm your host, Rodney 870, and welcome my co-hosts, Neely, Mr. Sports IQ, Lemuel, aka Limwood, and Stanley, known on Instagram as Third World 870. Please enjoy this PBR clip and subscribe to our YouTube channel. What if black athletes, top black athletes, and we're talking about top ESPN top 300, ESPN top 100 basketball players, let's say if 50% of those guys decided to attend HBCU universities and schools instead of all going to Division I would say predominantly white schools, how would that affect the impact of HBCUs from an economic standpoint, from a growth standpoint, from a standpoint of recognition, from a revenue, as I said, economics, revenue generating the same thing? How would that affect them? And I pulled out some stats today, guys, where 85 of the top 100 NCAA basketball players were African American. 225 of the top 300 NCAA football players were African American. 75% of the NFL, the NBA, is black or African American, and 70% of the NFL African American. And if you look at some of the things that this point out is that African American athletes have predominantly dominated these major sports, and these major sports generate a lot of money, generate billions of dollars on TV contracts, merchandise sale, everything. So if you look at the NCAA coaches, Division I football coaches, their salaries range between $400,000 a year to $8.5 million a year, with an average of, if I'm not mistaken, $2 million a year, average D1 coach made. Out of those coaches, 117 are white and only 13 are black. And that was the last statistic I pulled. Liam, you might have something different. HBCU coaches, salaries range between $95,000 and $200,000, and the average is like about $115,000. So when I look at that, it's disturbing to me because you have these black athletes who are generating this revenue for these major white colleges. But I also looked at a study by Dr. Sean Harper that said black men represent 2.8% of the undergraduate students at these major white universities, which means we have these athletes going to these schools, generating this revenue, but only 2.8% of overall black males are admitted into these universities. So we're not benefiting from these athletes generating all this revenue and building these programs and building these schools up, and these schools are being able to build a great medical university the way Miami did on the backs of Michael Irvin and Jesse Armstead and some of those guys that went to University of Miami in the 80s, where that school was pretty much nothing at first, and then those guys were able to generate a lot of revenue. And the way I look at it, guys, is that these schools I'm not saying they're taking advantage of these guys, because these guys are getting scholarships. They are getting, some of them are receiving their degrees. So it's a good thing. But at the same time, what does it say about us as a community where we have HBCUs with football programs, with basketball programs, and it could dramatically change the culture? It could dramatically change the impact or the growth or represent these. If they go and represent these schools, you're talking about TV contracts, media, everything. I just don't understand why we can't get to the point where some of our parents forms their children to say, hey, you have this talent, go to this school, ESPN will follow, FS1 will follow. People will follow if you go there and win. And not only are you helping, the pro football program, you're helping the students who are majority black at those schools. You're helping the instructors and the teachers and the professors who are majority black at those schools. You're helping the administration who is majority black. So not saying we have to be exclusively black, but it will help out a lot. With that said, I want to go on into and get some opinions from my co-host. Stanley, go ahead with your opinion. What you think on this?
Man, I think with that, I think everything you said is correct. It would obviously, without being said, help the economic standards for HBCUs and things like that. But I feel, well, with football and basketball, man, I think it's totally different. In order to make a real change with football, man, you would probably have to have 3 or 4 consecutive recruit classes, big waves of that to affect football, because the NFL drafts a lot more on production.
Yeah.
And the NBA draft is a lot more on potential. So, like, you would need, and with football being the ultimate team sport, like, if you're the number 1 quarterback in the nation, you still gonna need a good offensive line and good receivers and things for you to actually maximize your talent, for you to be able to get to the next level to the NFL. And I think that's why a lot of NFL guys, or a lot of college football guys, go to Alabama. I mean, they're LSU. They're football factories. They're gonna push you to the next. They're gonna get you to the NFL. And so, like, you need a wave of. You'll have to have 2 or 3, 4 consecutive classes to make it really happen in football. With basketball, NBA drafts on potential a lot. Like, I don't care where Zion Williamson went to school at this year. He could have went to UAPB. He still would be a top 3 pick. Don't matter. Because they've been looking at him since he was in the 9th grade, you know, and knowing how good he's going to be, or trying to project how good he's going to be. So I think that would be the hard part about the football anyway. With basketball, I think you could get, you know, if you had 7 of the top 10 players that went to HBCUs, they would all probably still be top 10 or 15 draft picks, no matter where they went to school for that 1 year, because, I mean, you would still see him hoop dunking on people. ESPN would still have him on top 10 plays, all of that. With football, man, it'll just be a lot harder, because you got to be developed as a player. You got to be there for 3 years. You got to stay healthy. You know, it's so many factors that go into football. That's what I think would be the hard part about it. But to your point, that it would definitely be economically advantageous, let me say that, for HBCUs, obviously, man, black coaches, black faculty, things like that, helping groom young black men into being better people, which you get that at HBCUs, but you just don't get the next level production. You don't get a lot of them going to the NFL and things of that nature.
But Stanley, let me ask you
something.
something.
And so that's what I think would be the hard part. Go ahead.
Let me cut in there real quick, Stanley. But we do understand you're saying that these athletes, you know, you don't think it'll be good for the football on the football side, but we would have to understand, to get where we're trying to go, maybe those first 3 or 4 classes will have to sacrifice themselves to get it done. And what I mean by that is, if those guys,
well, let me stop you real quick.
Go.
I didn't say it wouldn't be good. I'm just saying it would be hard.
Okay.
I didn't say it would be good for football, because it would definitely be good. It would just be hard. So let me correct you on that. Okay. I want you to think I'm saying it wouldn't be good for black students to go to HBCUs. That ain't what I'm saying. What I'm saying, it would just be more difficult.
Okay.
Right. And to a point real quick on that, I do feel like Stan is saying, I think it would kind of have to start with basketball anyway. And I feel like basketball already is kind of leading that political side as far as that type of movement, not so far as the players going to those schools yet, but the athletes having that type of voice already, with the LeBron James, the Kevin Garnett's, Kevin Durant's, the Seth Curry's. These guys are talking about a lot of things already, and it would be easier for like a wave, an elite class to say, you know what, we're going to represent Howard this year and ball out, or we're going to represent whatever HBCU it is at that particular point and ball out. And if a few classes do that, then that's, you know, bringing attention to that conference overall, as well as, you know, the individual school.
So, Liam, if we did it on the football side, let's say break down a plan that would have to happen, or a 5-year plan we would need for it to be successful from a football standpoint, Lemuel.
Stan made a good point. It'd be very difficult for football. It would have to be, like you said, it have to be consecutive classes. You also have to keep in mind the TV contracts. So if I'm in the SEC has already got a 8-year TV contract that's going to bring revenue into the conference that splits up through the schools. So if I get a kid or 3 classes to go to UAPB and all these other prospective schools, where's the TV contract gonna come in? Because they're not contracted. So it's gonna take them 4 or 5 years to even get that deal going to where they could give that money to the company.
And that was my point, Liam, was that the first 2 or 3 classes will have to sacrifice, and once people see the movement, at that point the TV contracts and the sponsors will follow those athletes. If Darren McFadden, let's say if Darren McFadden came after 3 classes of let's say top 300 students, top 300 football players signing at HBCU. Let's say 100 signed with HBCUs, and Darren McFadden came in at 5th class. At that point, ESPN gonna want to cover Darren McFadden, so they're going to do some type of TV deal with the SWAC to be able to cover 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 Darren McFadden football games. You have to sacrifice to get what you want.
But now this is the thing. Now you're talking about, this is a huge sacrifice you're talking about, because football, like Stan say, it's production. There's so many things that go into it. So I'm gonna go into a couple things. Number one, people go to programs that can push them, like Stan said, that push them to the NFL. I remember it was a guy Miami had named Tracy Howard. He was a 5-star cornerback from Miami, big time talent. He went when Al Golden was our coach. He played a conservative 3-4, back off the receivers. Tracy Howard didn't get drafted. He wanted to go to Florida. At that time, Florida had guys like Joe Hayden, big time guys that played a style that was productive for the NFL. Yeah. And going back on it, he did in an interview, he said he wished he would have went to a program that would have pushed him in the NFL. So guys are cognizant of that. Right now they have a guy, Henry Gray, top cornerback, one of the top cornerbacks in the nation. Don't even have Miami in his top 8. It's Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. And his thing is, I want to go to the NFL. That's the top thing. Whoever is going to put me in the NFL is the best. So you have to think the mindset of these players right now. They want to make sure that their future is secure before anything. So you will have to kind of propose to them. You'll have to propose to them something that is that were able to get them there, even at the HBCU. Because without that, I don't think you're going to get them there. 2, football. I'm going to go 2, training. The training staff. So at the HBCU, you may have a doctor, one doctor, or one trainer. You go to Alabama, if you go see an injured player, you see about 5, 6 dudes on the field. Medically, they got their all their credentials, everything. So the training and the money that they have and resources that they have for you for injury is far greater than that of another school, that are HBCU. So
Liam, if you don't mind, let me piggyback on what you're saying real quick. I hate to cut you off, but I just want to piggyback on what you're saying and use an example that we all 4 of us know close hand. And Rodney, you remember when Mark Bradley hurt his knee at UAPB?
Absolutely.
That's the reason he transferred to Oklahoma, because him and his dad did not feel like UAPB was rehabbing his knee correctly. And not because I don't say they wanted to, they just don't have the resources.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you remember, I know you remember this, Rodney. This one I knew Mark was fast because he beat you running with a knee brace on.
I
remember that. He had on blue jeans and a knee brace.
Hey, he didn't have on a knee brace then. He didn't have on a knee brace then.
Man, he had on blue jeans. He had
just come off that injury, but he didn't have on a knee brace then.
Bro, he had on a knee brace. He had on blue jeans and a knee brace.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, though, but seriously, one of the reasons he went to Oklahoma because he didn't feel like UAPB was rehabbing his knee, and so not having those resources is another. And when we say you're asking kids to sacrifice, man, like Liam said, you asking a big sacrifice, man. You asking them to possibly sacrifice their NFL future, their livelihood future on making a stand to go to these HBCUs. So I mean, can you blame them really for not?
Let me ask you guys something.
Got all these great facilities.
Let me ask you guys something, Stan and Liam, and I'll get to you in a second, Illy, get your points. So you're saying that in this day and age, we're not willing, because this is what this topic is all about. You don't think parents and athletes can sit down and say, okay, there's going to be some sacrifice, But at the same time, we live in a technology world. Look at the kid from Murray State. Nobody knew about him a year ago. And all of a sudden now he's in the top 3 NBA draft because of technology, because of the way the world is today. It's not like it was in the 80s and the 90s where you had to go to a big school just to be recognized by the NFL or the NBA. Look at Damian Lillard. Look at CJ McCollum. Those guys came from small schools. You have to, in basketball, like you said, you're right, basketball. But at the same,
man, Stephen there was number 3 in the draft from Alcorn State.
Tyron Armstead,
yep.
Second round pick.
Yeah,
just signed like a $90 million
even there was a number 3 pick.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there are going to be cases where you get players that do go to HBCUs to creep up in there. Armstead was a late round draft pick too. You know what I mean? It was like a diamond in the rough discovery. Think if Armstead had that potential.
No, he was second or third round, Liam. I'll look it up real quick. But
okay,
I think he was second or third.
Think about if
I think he was a third round pick.
I think it was third round, yeah. So if Armstead would have went to a Florida or a Alabama and he had that same type of production and talent and that type of potential, you know, it could be said he could be hired, but I get your point. But another thing you have to think of with these players, you're thinking one-offs. Stanley made a great point. If I'm the number 1 quarterback in the nation, would I look good if I go to a horrible offensive line? If I don't have the things around me to make sure that my production is there, would it be there for me? Because you got to think about a lot of these players, especially in football, especially the ones I studied from South Florida, they don't have anything. So their family is dependent on them to make sure they make the right decision to go to Bama or whoever. So they got a whole family that they got to think about. They can't be thinking about, you know, hey, man, we got to make that sacrifice for them puts their family in the hole for generations. So you got to think about that in the aspect of is the football players are a little bit different. These basketball players, a lot of them now, they are going, not saying a lot of them aren't from low economic area, but a lot of them now, man, they in private schools in 10th grade, 11th grade, you know, Lonzo Balls, think about that. You know, they were okay as a family before he even got to, you know, to basketball. So now a lot of these players in NBA or college ball, they're not where they just at the disadvantage like they were years ago, where football players, they really come, especially South Florida, they come from nothing. So it's a little different.
Right. Like it's hard to tell a man that mama make $30,000 or $40,000 a year to sacrifice for the culture to go to UAPB instead of Alabama.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
To go to Alabama State even, that Alabama, you asking a man to sacrifice possibly his livelihood.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, they can, like Liam, I mean, you couldn't have even said it better. That decision can put his family in the hole for 2 generations, or it can bring them out the hole for 2 generations. So when you asking for that kind of sacrifice, man, it is, that's a real sacrifice you asking for the betterment of the community. And anyone who does it, more power to them, man. Thank you for doing it, but I'm not going to be mad if you don't.
Now,
I feel like in a lot of ways, on both sides, we're talking about some of the extreme situations. Like, we're not telling each athlete from the slums, you know, if you make it, like, man, you know, you still just stay here and put on for your city if you got a chance to go somewhere else and shine and get trained and get better production. But on the other end, we also not telling every single individual to start to do it at one particular time. Like, just kind of playing the fence here and, like, kind of seeing it both ways. Like, I do feel like it's hard for even some of the smaller schools to convince these players, like, why would UAPB kind of waste their time recruiting a Zion Williamson? Like, I'm not going to put resources into that. There's only certain hours I can recruit. There's only certain things I can do as far as coming towards him. But also, you know, in the mindset of a Zion Williamson, like Stan said, like, you going pro regardless. You're pretty much number 1 regardless of where you go. So you can go, you know, if you want to put on for the culture and go to any school you want to and say, you know what, I'm going to go out, you know, to UAPB and speak and ball out here, and the pros going to come and get me. Because, you know, regardless of where you're playing, the NFL, the NBA, they coming to get talent at this point. You know, kind of to Rodney's point, like, you know, you seeing highlight videos day after day after day of Zion, like we knew Zion 5-6 years ago. So, you know, the attention is there as far as the marketability, I guess, of the player before the player steps on any university or any campus. I think ultimately it's going to go down to the mindset all the way back to, you know, kids in Pee Wee. Like, when y'all was playing Pee Wee ball, like Rodney wasn't dreaming about playing for UAPB, like you dreaming about playing for Florida State and Miami and Nebraska and these schools that you're seeing, you know. So it's all drilling it all the way down to, you know, dang near to an infant level, the importance of black culture, the importance of, you know, the respect for that, you know, everything that black people have going and the training and the stuff we can get from a university outside of, you know, just potentially making it pro each and every time, just bringing everything back to, I guess, the home team, you know, so to speak. So you kind of look at it, I mean, it's a huge dynamic, like not to sway too negative, saying like, why would every recruit, you know, run and go here and they would never get a chance to go pro? But, you know, you got to take advantage of the opportunities presented to you in that manner. Like, and I guess to spin it back, you know, just on the cultural side, somebody's going to have to start the movement, to me, in a more united way. Like, you'll always have that trickle down, one or two people, like Rodney could mention in the NBA, that went. But at some point, we need classes to kind of come, like Rodney was mentioning, you know, 100 people actually go, and it's an actual concentrated attempt to, you know, bring that the kind of demand, I guess, for players to start to do it.
And one thing I would say is this, Stanley and Liam, to, you know, I want you guys to respond to this. If you look at it, a guy signs with Alabama, a running back, and Alabama has 3 running backs, and he's a top, let's say he's 170 on the top 300 list. That guy, can go to Alabama. Can get the training, but he's not on the field. He's not getting film. He's not developing himself as far as a player on the field in game time, in game situations. So how much does that training in those facilities really help him if he's not on the field, enhancing his skills over the 4 years? Now, if that same kid decided to go to North Carolina A&T, who has won 3 black college football national championships in the last 4 years, and he was a starting running back from year 1, and he was able to develop his skills playing on the field. He was able to get footage out there. He was able to play and put himself in a position. Then what would happen is that kid doesn't have the name of a Mark Ingram or somebody like that, but that kid can turn that program into a winning program. If you picked up 5 to 6 of those players on the top HBCU programs, like your Gramblin's, your Southerns, your North Carolina A&T's from the MEAC, and those teams, and you're building your program up where it's becoming a winning tradition, and you're filling the stands every weekend. And now ESPN, kind of like they're doing with Murray State, they want to cover this game. They have this app called ESPN Plus, and this ESPN Plus app can cover games. And I think I read something where they was paying Murray State like $200,000 a game on ESPN Plus to cover this guy's games, just to cover the games. And they just started covering like 3 games ago. He wasn't even on the radar at first. So if you could do something like that, I'm not saying the guy like Michael Irvin coming out who's a top 10 recruit. No, you know he's going to go to Miami. He's going to go to Arkansas. But what about those kids that's just signing with these schools and just sitting on the bench for 4 years and maybe play special teams their 5th year? And when they came out of high school, they were top 300 recruits. Why can't they make the decision to go to HBCUs and help turn the programs around and become big names there?
I give you some. That doesn't happen now. Nobody's gonna sit in today's college football. They ain't gonna just sit for 5 years. Now there are players that you have like quarterbacks, running backs. Kenyon Drake was a player. He got drafted in the field. He sat on the bench to his senior year and played and still had to cut time. He got drafted. The boy Isaiah Crowell, that was a 5-star. He went to Georgia. He transferred to Alabama State. I didn't hear too much about him at Alabama State. He got drafted, but I didn't hear Alabama State did a whole lot of hoopla. It was also a quarterback. I think he's at Grambling or Southern, not for sure. He went to Ole Miss. He came out of Cedar Hill, Texas. He was a quarterback. He transferred back to Grambling. You know, it's a lot of that happens that you just don't know. It's a lot of 4-star, 5-star players. They transfer back to HBCU.
Tavares Jackson did it. Transferred from Arkansas to Alabama State. Had a long NFL career. Had a long NFL career. So it happened.
Yeah, but like you said, it's gonna take a wave of them in football. Like, I mean, I think we all agree it's gonna be most difficult to do in football as far as the notoriety.
Yeah. I'll give you an example real quick, Liam, and keep your thought and respond to this. I'll give you an example. Okay. Coming up, all I heard was crap about UAPB. Like, oh, if you get out of high school, you go to UAPB, you're not really doing anything. But if you sign with Arkansas, if you decide to take your academics and go to Arkansas and get your degree, oh, they're on the hill. They're at the University of Arkansas. They must be doing good. Well, UAPB was shitted on. I've spoken with maybe 15 parents who are African Americans who children are about to go to college in the next 2 or 3 years. And I was so shocked to hear that maybe 10 or 11 of them have been directing their children to HBCUs because they understand the education they get at this school. They're understanding the type of environment you in is an environment that's going to develop you and help you grow and help you get out and not only just tell you, hey, get that degree. All right, thank you for your money. Okay, kick rocks. They're going to take you to put you in programs like the STEM program and the NSBE program. They're going to take you to conventions where companies are, and they're going to look at you in certain ways. They're going to treat you like you're one of their own, and they're going to make sure that not only do you get that degree, and not only do you not have to pay, $80,000 a year to go, but you're going to be connected with professionals from HBCUs. You're going to have a better chance. And that's the dynamic I'm talking about. That dynamic is happening from an academic standpoint. Because I don't want my daughter to go to USC. I want her to go to Alabama State or to Prairie View.
But to play devil's advocate, just to what you're saying, and I completely understand, but we're doing that, and I'm one of the people that have a daughter that's on her way to college, and I'm definitely pushing and steering towards an HBCU. But that's also based on the career path that I see her going. Like we talking about elite recruits whose career path ends up being in the NFL. And if Maya's career path was to go and be an elite doctor, I might position her to a certain medical school, be that a HBCU or just what I felt like at the time when I researched to be the best medical school. So, it's hard to tell some of the best recruits, I know where you see your career going, but take this path instead of that one.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Example from that too, I want to take this on personal experience. When I left Verizon and I started working for Northwestern Mutual, which was financial advisor, the one thing that I saw is the connections that they had to where the connections that I had, or lack of connections that I had. The people that they were able to talk to from like big time universities that had millions of dollars and things like that, it was easier for them. So like Neely said, it's a career. It depends on your career path and where you're going. Another example, I don't know if you guys have watched it, you need to. O.J. Simpson documentary on ESPN. And what I mean by where I'm going with that is that O.J. after USC, his career, even after football, his career was made based upon the connections that he made from USC. Every school does that. You can go to Florida. If you do well in Florida University, they'll take care of you. You go to Arkansas, Matt Jones. Example, Matt Jones probably don't have to do nothing else in the state of Arkansas. Keith Jackson, he went somewhere else. He ain't got to do anything in the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
So,
but as we go back, with you saying that, Liam, you still depending on and I hate to say it because I don't want to seem racist or anything, but you're depending on the white man for those opportunities.
Right.
Would you rather be able to talk to Rodney, who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and I went to an HBCU, and I say, yeah, you know what? We're going to start using our resources. Like I give you an example. I work for GE. We have a certain amount of resources every year that we use towards recruiting. Let's say if it's $30 million. So they have to pick and choose what universities and what programs that they're going to be recruiting from to bring in new future directors and VPs and people like that. So if Rodney McGee is a VP at GE and I have a word in where those resources are allocated, maybe I say, hey, let's recruit the SWAC, let's recruit the MEAC, let's recruit some of those HBCUs so we can bring in some people. Example, in my office right now, every time I talk to somebody that's new there, I say, hey, where you from? Oh, I'm from Havre, Montana. Oh, Havre, Montana? Wow, okay. You here in Texas? Yeah. I was recruited out of the University of Havre. Oh, wow. Then I go talk to HR. Yeah, we allocate 10% of our resources to recruit from that program at Havre. So those are the kind of connections that you want. Now you're right. going to those big schools like Vince Young, the University of Texas taking care of Vince Young. He done screwed up 30 times, and they still paying him six figures to come there and just talk to people every now and then. And that's true, Liam. I get what you're saying. But at the same time, I want us to make this sacrifice so 25 years from now, we're doing that for ourselves and not depending on someone else to do that. Go ahead,
I think
Stan.
a lot of the difference we're doing is talking, and let me interrupt, my apologies, Dan, is macro and micro. Like Rodney's talking on a massive scale, like economically we need to do it because it's going to grow our communities regardless. And then we're looking at it on a micro scale and narrowing it down to like, but it's hard for this one particular guy to do it. Like at the end of the day, it honestly needs to be done.
But you got to also think of realistically of who's going to do it. That's the key.
That's the key. Like, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Who is willing to say, man, I may throw away a future of $80 to $100 million. It may not be there. You know, you got that type of scale too. And then too, from that standpoint, that's when we should have the different programs and different community programs and groups and organizers. That's where they should come in and to help support and help market that kid or help those classes to be able to do that. That's what those marketing groups are for, is to be able to enhance that kid that may want to go out on the limb. Because right now I don't hear anybody, I see, people like us, individuals saying that, but those groups, community sectors, and all these projects that we have, they have to back these players and also try to, they can, to fund it.
Gotcha. Okay. Right. Stan, last word from you.
Just to agree with Liam and what he was saying, yeah, man, and Neely, like we were talking macro and micro, and like you said, it's gonna take waves. But one thing you did bring up, right? If players 200 through 300 on the top ESPN top 300, the players 200 through 300 went to HBCUs, that would ultimately grow it. It might not have to be the top 10, that's gonna go to Alabama or whatever. It could be players 200 through 300. If they all went to HBCUs, then you would see a mass production in players drafted from HBCUs, which ultimately that's what it's coming down to. You want to go to a school that's producing NFL players, But, I agree, man. But I say it's going to be a tough thing to do. You will need, like we all said, we're going to need waves of it, and it's hard to ask. And hopefully we'll get some parents that steer kids in that direction in the near future. Yeah, exactly. And it can happen.
Exactly, I agree. And with that being said, I think in a nutshell here, we agree that from a basketball standpoint, it's possible because one or two players can make a big difference in a basketball program and bring TV contracts immediately. The way the kid and somebody say the kid name, I can't even think of his name right now, from Murray State.
John Morant.
Oh, John Morant.
John Morant. Okay, just like him. Everybody know who he is now, and ESPN was in a negotiation war with Fox to try to broadcast some of his last games this year, and ESPN I guess won the contract, and now they're broadcasting all of his last 3 games have been on ESPN Plus. And so something like that can bring, he's probably going to bring a couple of $1 million just in the last month of the season to this school. And so in basketball, we agree it can happen. And football is going to be a little bit different because you would need so many players to migrate over and decide to go to HBCUs to make that impact where, let's say if UAPB was able to pull in 10 of the top 300 one year, and then the next they pulled in 6, and then the next they pulled in 8, and at this time they have maybe 20 to 30 players who are in the top 300, and they can go and schedule Colorado State and defeat them. They could go schedule Arkansas State and defeat them, and that would give them the recognition needed. And then going into those senior years, those players are prospects, and maybe ESPN come to UAPB and say, hey, we want to broadcast some of your games on ESPN Plus. Here's a $200,000 per game contract, and that brings money in, brings better facilities as we talked about, brings more training, brings everything, and then over time you will grow from that. So, but at the same time, we don't think that's possible because we're asking these kids and these parents to sacrifice, potential futures to change their family fortune. So I think we all got our points across. I think this was a good topic. I'm going to end it here and move on to the next topic today. Thank you for listening to the PVR Sports Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch new episodes and PVR clips. Like our Facebook page and share with your friends if you enjoyed this podcast. As we say in the South, catch you later.